Good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for being here today. I'm State Senator Carolyn Comitta, representing Chester County. I am taking my mask off, and my colleagues today are as well. We are all fully vaccinated, and of course, we all believe in science, and that is why we are here today. I want to thank Governor Wolf, Secretary McDonnell, Representative Dianne Herrin, and all of our colleagues from the House and Senate and environmental organizations for being here today. I also want to recognize the co-chairs of the Legislative Climate Caucus, Representative Danielle Friel-Otten and Senator Steve Sanacero. And I would also like to thank Senate Democratic Leader Jay Costa and our House Democratic Leader, Representative Joanna McClinton. A climate crisis is happening before our very eyes. With annual temperatures rising, we're living through severe weather, increased flooding, and growing impacts to our economy, our health, our infrastructure, and nearly every facet of our daily lives. In response, we are introducing the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, RGGI, Investments Act, legislation that reflects the administration's proposed RGGI funding program. This legislation, Senate Bill 15 in the Senate and House Bill 1565, introduced by Representative Herrin in the House, makes targeted investments to support environmental justice communities, workers affected by energy transition, and Pennsylvania's growing clean energy, commercial, and industrial sectors. The bill is the product of extensive meetings with key stakeholders across the Commonwealth, including environmental advocacy, environmental justice, renewable energy, and labor groups and communities. With the final RGGI rulemaking expected to go before the Environmental Quality Board this summer, we are moving closer to making RGGI a reality in Pennsylvania. This bill is a key piece of the puzzle in ensuring that the hundreds of millions of dollars in proceeds raised annually through RGGI are invested in assisting workers in transitioning to clean energy jobs, promoting clean energy and energy efficiency programs, cutting greenhouse gas emissions, and supporting the health and well-being of Pennsylvanians and families in environmental justice communities. 50 years ago, we made a promise. 50 years ago, Pennsylvania voters, Republicans and Democrats, overwhelmingly ratified Article 1, Section 27 of our state constitution, the Environmental Rights Amendment. It reads, "The people have a right to clean air, pure water, and to the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment. Pennsylvania's public natural resources are the common property of all the people, including generations yet to come. As trustee of these resources, the Commonwealth shall conserve and maintain them for the benefit of all the people." Today, we are taking another step forward to keep that promise. RGGI and RGGI Investments Act will help ensure a safe, healthy environment for all people and a better and brighter future for all our children. Thank you. And now let me introduce my friend and colleague from Chester County, Representative Dianne Herrin.
Thank you, Senator Comitta. And so I'm Dianne Herrin, representative with the 156th District in Chester County in the Westchester area. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to be here with the Governor, Senator Comitta, and all of my colleagues here this morning to introduce the RGGI Investment Act, which is critically important. As we know, RGGI is a market-based cap and investment program that creates a budget for CO2 pollution from the power sector. The state sets CO2 allowances through auctions and then invests the proceeds in energy efficiency, renewable energy, and other programs. This program will generate hundreds of millions of dollars in proceeds to be invested right here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, while enabling Pennsylvania to join the 11 other northeastern states on a regional trajectory to reduce CO2 pollution 30% over the course of this decade. We all know this is necessary to address the existential threat of climate change. Pennsylvanians know this, Americans know this, and the world knows that we must act now. Specifically, this bill will put about half of the RGGI proceeds into the Clean Air Fund for clean energy and energy efficiency projects in the commercial and industrial sectors. Being part of RGGI will reduce carbon pollution by 188 million tons by 2030, and that's just in Pennsylvania. This will also create jobs in this sector. Prior to becoming a state representative, I was an energy efficiency consultant for the commercial and industrial sectors. And I can tell you that we worked under the RGGI program in the state of Delaware for the Sustainable Energy Utility. This sustained jobs and created jobs in my company. This investment into the Clean Air Fund will also save lives and will help preserve our sixth largest industry, healthcare, as well. Nearly 700 lives that would be lost to respiratory failure will be prevented. Tens of thousands fewer hospital visits we will experience, and more. But I have to tell you, that's not at all why I am truly excited to be introducing this new legislation alongside the Governor and Senator Comitta. I believe that this bill, which will appropriate the RGGI proceeds, is the most forward-looking, solution-oriented proposal for appropriating RGGI proceeds that we have seen since this program began in our neighboring states in 2005. It answers the concerns on both sides of the aisle, and it addresses the needs of the people of the Commonwealth. Why? Because this bill recognizes that the energy sector is changing forever. The transitioning of our energy economy away from the most polluting fuel sources has already begun. This train is out of the station. For example, we know that the Keystone XL pipeline, which was slated to carry the very dirty tar sands oil from Alberta to Nebraska, is officially dead. We also recently heard that here in Pennsylvania, the Cheswick Generating Station, located just outside of Pittsburgh, will close in September, and it's one of 3 coal closures announced by the Texas-based owner, who will, frankly, simply shut down and leave the community. We also recently learned that what is known as the Blacksville No. 2 coal mine and plant, which began operating in 1970 near the Pennsylvania-West Virginia border, will close later this year, leaving hundreds of miners behind. This bill also recognizes that the biggest investment firms, the private sector job creators in this country, are all in on green energy. Morgan Stanley is diversifying from fossil fuels and wants to have a net zero financed emissions portfolio by 2050, even though worldwide energy use is expected to climb by 50% by then. And BP has the same goal. JP Morgan has committed $2.5 trillion by 2030 towards sustainable development and green energy, including $200 billion in direct investment in green power generation. This bill, because of the work done with all of the stakeholders, recognizes this is happening as a simple matter of economics and that it will continue to happen as a simple matter of economics. This is due to the very impressive economic viability of green energy and, frankly, the very cheap price of natural gas. Here's how this bill recognizes this reality. Half of the RGGI proceeds will go to help ensure that these communities and these workers that have formed the backbone of our existing energy economy for so long will not be left behind in this transition. 37.5% of proceeds go to an Energy Communities Trust Fund, which provides grants for economic development, community energy projects, workforce development, and worker retraining, along with supplemental unemployment compensation, support to school districts losing tax revenue. And these funds will be directed by a board that will include union representatives and representatives from the State Workforce Development Board. 12.5% will go to the Environmental Justice Communities Trust Fund for those communities that have suffered the worst health and economic effects of toxic pollution that have resulted from decades of dirty fossil fuel refining and generation. These funds will go toward environmental cleanup, economic development, environmental education, environmental health, electricity bill assistance, and workforce development and training. And the board established to direct these funds will include heavy representation from the public representing these environmental justice communities. Pennsylvania has always been a leader in energy, and this bill moves us forward in this leadership position. It's time we address the existential threat of climate change. It's time we embrace the future and start doing the right thing for the health of our families, for job growth, for our communities, and for cleaning up our air and our water. Joining the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative and appropriating it in this fashion is our best path forward in partnership with the other Mid-Atlantic states who've already shown us how successful this program can be, while still putting our people and our communities first. So thank you once again, and it is now my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce to you our governor, Tom Wolf.
Thank you, Representative Herrin, and thank you for that really nice introduction, and thank you, Senator Comitta, for co-sponsoring this piece of legislation. As they have both said, we are in the middle of a huge and major climate crisis. It's among the most pressing and challenging problems we face because the climate around us affects all of us in so many different ways. The quality of the air we breathe, the production of the food that we eat, the infrastructure that we all depend on for our lives. These are all damaged by a warming climate. And that's on top of the problems that climate change causes for recreation, for tourism, for environmental justice, just for our health. Rising global temperatures are intensifying damaging weather patterns in Pennsylvania. This means more frequent and extreme storms. We've all seen this. Heat waves, flooding, drought, wildfires, snowfall, including in parts of the state that we've never experienced these events before. Pennsylvanians are already experiencing the harmful effect of climate change. Every year, we lose homes. Every year, we lose businesses. Every year, we lose lives. And as greenhouse gas emissions continue to go up and the climate continues to warm, the problem is not getting any better. It's only getting worse. According to Pennsylvania's 2021 Climate Impacts Assessment, the average annual temperatures in the Commonwealth are going to rise by 5.9 degrees Fahrenheit by the middle of the century, by 2050. And just last week, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, announced that the average carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere is at the highest level it's been in 4 million years. Now, you remember the last ice age period started 2.4 million years ago. Right now, we have a higher carbon content than we did when that last ice age began. It's 50% higher than when the industrial age began. So we have to act, and we need to act quickly. to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and slow the warming of our climate before we lose more businesses, more homes, more lives. And that's why I signed an executive order in 2019 directing the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection to begin the process of participating in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiatives, RGGI. RGGI has a proven record of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in member states while at the same time increasing GDP. Pennsylvania will complete the rulemaking process to participate in RGGI starting in 2022. That's when we want to join RGGI. Estimates right now show that between 2022, when we join, and 2030, RGGI will increase gross state product by nearly $2 billion here in Pennsylvania. It'll add more than 27,000 jobs here in Pennsylvania. It'll reduce carbon emissions by up to 225 million metric tons. It'll prevent more than 600 premature deaths from air pollution. And the result will be 30,000 fewer hospital visits for respiratory illness in Pennsylvania. Anything that will raise GDP, that will increase jobs, that will improve our health and help save our planet all at the same time, I mean, that's a winner in my book. And polls show that nearly 3/4 of Pennsylvanians agree with all of us. RGGI has received broad support from environmental and business groups and labor groups in Pennsylvania because they know that by participating, we can fight climate change while helping businesses and workers in Pennsylvania. As Representative Herrin pointed out, funds brought in through RGGI will allow us to make targeted investments to support workers and communities affected by the energy transition, an energy transition that is already taking place. By the way, the Cheswick plant closure in September is accompanied by the closure of a number of coal-fired plants in Ohio, where no one's talking about RGGI. And in those plants, in those places, in those communities, those workers are not going to get any help from anybody for any transition. Whereas if we do what we're doing here in Pennsylvania, as we succeed, Pennsylvania will have the ability, the funds, to actually address the needs of transitioning workers. We'll also take those funds and invest in environmental justice and strengthen Pennsylvania's clean energy, commercial, and industrial sectors. So again, I want to thank Senator Comitta. I want to thank Representative Herrin for introducing legislation to make these investments a reality. What they're doing is taking the need to address climate change honestly and forthrightly, taking that from the zero-sum game it has always been in the past to something that says we are now going to create the promise, the ability, the funds to actually allow workers to make the transition and communities to make the transition that is already happening to the cleaner future. Their legislation calls for RGGI revenues to be invested in a variety of ways, but amazingly and most centrally to help in this transition process. Through these investments, we can address the existential threat of climate change that affects all of us, while also ensuring that people and communities that form the backbone of our existing energy economy are not left behind in the transition. This is really important. And Senator Comitta and Representative Herrin are making it all possible with their legislation. So I want to thank all the members of the General Assembly who are supporting good environmental policy, who are supporting good workers' policy, and who are supporting our path to a better, cleaner future. I'm deeply grateful for your unwavering commitment to our environment, and to our communities, and to our workers. Pennsylvania has always been an energy leader. It has always been. Now's the time for us to lead the way once again. The short-sighted proposals in the Pennsylvania General Assembly that seek to halt RGGI are ignoring the science of climate change and the reality of making this transition as smooth and painless and seamless as it can possibly be. They're ignoring the welfare of our fellow Pennsylvania citizens who want a healthier, safer, greener future, and they're ignoring the welfare of workers, communities, and businesses who will benefit from the funds that RGGI generates. So thank you, and now I'm proud to turn this over to Secretary of the Department of Environmental Protection, Patrick McDonald. Patrick.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Governor Wolf, and thank you, Senator Comitta, Representative Herrin, both for having me here today. And I want to thank you as well for introducing legislation to make meaningful investments in Pennsylvania jobs and communities using proceeds from RGGI. Taking part in RGGI is a way for Pennsylvania to both address the cause of climate change and the very real need to adapt to it. And make no mistake, these changes are already here, and they're only going to get more dramatic as time moves on. Pennsylvania is becoming hotter, a trend we will see accelerate in the coming decades. At the end of the 2000s, we averaged 5 days annually with temperatures above 90 degrees. This year, we have already seen 6 days above 90 degrees. And we anticipate by 2050, that number will be more than a month. Flooding will be more frequent, with heavy, faster storms punctuating hot, drought-like conditions. Poorer rural and urban communities, as well as communities of color, will feel these impacts most acutely. The legislation proposed by Senator Comitta and Representative Herrin will help ensure these communities are not left behind when it comes to being prepared for climate impacts. These bills also make sure that we are transitioning our economy in a way that doesn't leave people and communities behind. Just last week, as has been mentioned, a coal-fired power plant in Pennsylvania announced that it would be retiring before RGGI even takes effect. If this legislation becomes law, we will have the resources to help make sure workers can find new, well-paying jobs. The climate crisis threatens our present and our future, and we need solutions to address it now. We cannot ignore the crisis and hope it goes away. We can only take action to reduce the cause by cutting carbon pollution and prepare for the impacts. That's what this legislation does, and it does so by investing in our Commonwealth's greatest resources, its people. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Senator Comitta.
Thanks very much, Secretary McDonnell, Governor Wolf, Representative Herrin, and each of you for being here today, and my colleagues from the House, the Senate, and the environmental groups for standing with us today. So we are now pleased to take any questions that you may have. Yes, please.
Hello, do you hear me properly? Hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay. How much would you say is projected to be the funds that will be extracted from this proposal?
How much will be the?
How much do you project could be received from the proposal?
Okay, well, hundreds of millions of dollars. And of course, there are a lot of factors that go into that. So, but it will be significant proceeds that can be devoted to the programs that we outlined. Yes.
Have you guys talked to, you mentioned talking to the unions, have you talked to some of the building trades that are really impacted by this, Boilermakers, IBEW, have they been included in these conversations about how
Yes.
to use proceeds?
Yes. Labor unions, including building trades, have been a part of all of our conversations from the start. We've tried, well, we have succeeded in holding multi-stakeholder conversations for many months. And we have incorporated the concerns and ideas, recommendations from each of the groups.
Do you know if they back this legislation you're introducing today?
I think that is something I'm going to ask Secretary McDonnell to talk about. I know that some of the labor unions will are supporting vocally, and others are pleased to be at the table to have the conversation and make sure that it reflects their concerns.
I'm going to overrule Secretary
yes,
McDonnell.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Let's take this. So here's the idea. The choice that labor has, and we're working with them, and I think have been partially successful, but I think still working with them. The choice is whether we keep going and doing what we're doing. And I think with the Cheswick situation, we have a great example of what's going to happen. Let's look at Ohio. They're not doing anything with RGGI. They're not doing anything to create funds for the transition. Those coal plants are going to go out of business. They're going to retire, and all those jobs are going to be lost. All those communities are going to be devastated, and there's going to be nothing. That's what we've done in the past. That has not been a really good idea. What we're talking about here is that when something like that happens, and it's happening, the private sector, the commercial markets just are not funding the opening of coal-fired power plants now. So we can ignore that. We can close our eyes, close our ears, and say it's just not happening. I hate this. I hate this. It's doing terrible things to communities and workers who have done so much to provide our electricity. Or we can do something like RGGI, and that is find funds to say, we understand that you are facing a real transition here. We want to do something. We want to do something concrete, and that's where RGGI comes in. It's hundreds of millions of dollars, back to the original question that you asked, and much of it is coming because Pennsylvania is an energy exporter. Much of that will come from fees that are paid by people who don't even live in Pennsylvania. How can we be against this? Sorry, back to you, Carol.
Thank you, Governor. Other questions? Yes.
Do you anticipate any Republican support for either of these bills?
Well, I would certainly hope for Republican support because climate change and good environmental and economic policy, public health, is not a partisan issue. Yes.
Of the funds that could be allocated, what percentage do you think would be used to contribute to workforce development?
Here I will ask either our governor or our secretary of the DEP to address that.
Certainly, you'll be able to see it in the bill, but it's about half of the dollar, or over half of the dollars go for workforce development, and then 12.5% for environmental justice communities.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Yes.
So, as a follow-up to the question about Republican support, what is there a plan B if Republicans ignore this plan, if they don't buy into how to spend RGGI? What happens when, feasibly we're entered into the program next year and we don't have any plan in place, but I've got how to spend these dollars, then what?
Well, this bill is a framework for how to spend the RGGI proceeds. And we shall see how the process plays out. But without this RGGI Investment Act, the RGGI proceeds would, under current law, would be directed to the Clean Air program, Clean Air Fund. And that has a limited opportunity for investing and spending those proceeds. So this framework shows the need and the opportunity for expanding the investment and creates that framework. And we shall see. But we've put a lot of work over a lot of months and a lot of conversations and a lot of people to really listen and learn and come up with a plan that we believe best addresses the needs. All right, well, thank you. If anyone has any other questions, will you please reach out to me, Representative Herrin, the governor, or Secretary McDonald, and we will be happy to talk with you. Thank you so much.